On the way back from our honeymoon, we spent a few days in Buenos Aires, and again, it's like, I've been here loads of times, we'll find out why we just walked to the bus to the airport. And when we were walking across the square, about a block or two away from the bus stop, these two guys came out from behind. So one of them put a knife to my throat, the other put a gun to my wife's head.
G'day and welcome to Global Horizons. I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming to you today from Ngunnawal country in magnificent Canberra. And it really is magnificent. It's that perfect Canberra day where the sky is blue. I'm sitting outside, and we're going to have a bit of a laugh about this, I'm sure, with my guest. Sitting outside, and we're on a concrete wall in a car park. But you've got to do what you've got to do. The trees are just blooming, the green leaves everywhere. It's a magnificent Canberra day, and I couldn't be happier to be joined by Mike Ferguson from Charles Sturt Uni. Mike, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Morning, Rob. It's great to be here, and what a fantastic location in the car park.
We just pull out all the stops here on Global Horizons to make this an amazing experience. Mate, before we started recording, so we were standing at the coffee shop, and I was sort of having a little catch-up chat, and you just mentioned off the cuff that, your wife is from Peru and you're living in Brisbane. And I just thought to myself, there must be a bit of a story somewhere in there.
Yeah.
How did you meet your wife?
Absolutely, Rob. So we've been married, it's almost 20 years now, but I met my wife when I was 21, backpacking in South America, and very early morning, a little bit earlier than this actually, but not much more. And I was at the airport in Lima, about to fly to Cusco. And I was there with my mate, and we saw this little boy over in the corner who seemed to have something under his jumper. And when we should have looked closer, he had an iguana under his jumper that he was trying to sneak onto the plane to take with him. Obviously, it was his pet. Anyway, so we started talking to him, showed us the iguana, and we were talking and so on. And then my wife came over, and we sort of started having a conversation. And then that was kind of all that it was, shared email addresses and so on. And then 2 years later, when I came back to South America as part of a outbound mobility experience at my university at the time, I met up with her and stayed for a few months, and we started going out and, eventually got married a couple of years later.
Oh, well, there's so much to unpack in there. So I think the outbound mobility thing. So what university did you go to? How on earth was it so lucky that they ended up having a program that went to Lima,
Yeah, no. So I went to the University of Wollongong.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a thing they had at the time called Project Challenge. And we went to Brazil, Argentina and Peru. It was a very good trip. It was 5 weeks, adventure leadership. So we did things like hiking in the jungles in Brazil, rock climbed up Sugarloaf Mountain, worked in local schools in Argentina, those sorts of things. It was about having fun, but testing yourself in challenging circumstances. So we did that. It finished in Peru. I didn't do the Peru bit, but I flew on to Peru and spent a few months there at the time.
Yeah, you've opened a can there. South America. I mean, it's interesting because for the longest time, South America to me was just like a blank page on the map, if that makes sense. Like I saw it on the map. It looks appealing, but I don't know. It had no impression. Then went to Argentina and was blown away by the continent. What for you were some of the highlights of that experience or those experiences in South America?
I love South America, Robin. I think, ever since I was a young boy, I remember, I think watching my first World Cup at 9 and seeing the Argentina team and, I don't think I'd heard of the country before then. And then just having this affiliation and wanting to go and explore and travel there. So, I did that as soon as I was able to. I love the whole continent, but particularly Argentina, and I'd probably have to say Peru now for obvious reasons. But yeah, just everything about it, the food, the culture. I'm a big football fan. So this, obviously growing up in Europe and then having this alternative football universe in Brazil and Argentina with these teams and players, it was something that was very appealing. So I saw quite a few football matches over there.
Boca Juniors?
I did go to Boca. I'm a River fan.
Sure, but that's like the cauldron,
I did go to see Boca play. And so I was staying in a place called San Telmo in Argentina, which is not too far from La Boca. But I walked from there at night, which probably wasn't the best thing in the world to do. I didn't get robbed that time, but I have been mugged a couple of times in South America over the years.
Do you want to share?
Yeah. Probably the best, well, best time. Is there a best time to get mugged? Probably the most interesting time, Rob, was actually after I got, Cynthia, my wife, and I, we got married in 2007. And on the way back from our honeymoon, we spent a few days in Buenos Aires, and we're, again, it's like, I've been here loads of times, it's all fine, don't worry. We just walked to the bus to the airport. And when we were walking across the square, about a block or two away from the bus stop, these two guys came out from behind. So one of them put a knife to my throat. The other put a gun to my wife's head. Anyway, so they grabbed the backpacks, and I had the passport and so on in there, because obviously sort of on the way to the airport. So I sort of said to the guys, come here, let's, I've got, other stuff, happy to give you my camera, whatever else, can I at least just get my passport? So the guys sat down with us, we were just talking to them, only young sort of guys, 16, 17 or something. And in the end, we ended up negotiating. So, don't take that, take this, and did all of that. There's a bit of a pre-story to this as well, Rob, actually, because before we travelled to Peru for the wedding, my wife had lost one of the diamonds from her engagement ring that I'd bought, a year earlier when we were in Colombia. And we'd taken that to a jeweler's in Peru before the wedding to say, oh, look, how much is it going to cost us to get replaced? And the guy was like, I don't know, $20. I'm like, what, $20 for a diamond? What do you mean? It's like, they're not diamonds. so the ring that I paid, $2,000 for was worth about $150. So anyway, so when the guys were sat down with us, we still had that engagement ring. They wanted to take our wedding. I was like, no, don't take the wedding ring, take the engagement ring. That's worth, $2,000 or whatever else. So they ended up taking the engagement ring, whatever else we were able to negotiate with them. And when I was back, I was able to claim for the full amount in insurance, because that was what I paid, and get her a proper engagement ring. So it had a happy ending.
Oh, mate, what a cracking story. That's beautiful. What a great story. Yeah, I mean, and to come out of that, I mean, how terrifying in the moment. And then at the end, when you on the plane, what do you guys say to each other?
Well, so at the time, Rob, we ended up getting on the bus, and I don't know if we had the bus tickets or not, but the guys there sort of took sympathy on us and like, yeah, guys, just get on, don't worry about it. But at the time, there was a $10 departure tax or something like that from Argentina, and of course the guys had taken our credit cards and all the cash and everything, so we just had no means of paying it. And I was arguing at the airport, saying, surely, this is what's just happened. Here's the police report, because we reported to the police at the airport. You are not going to make us miss a flight just for $10. And they just didn't care. It's like, no. So it was a good opportunity, for me to use some of the more imaginative vocabulary that I have in Spanish for the first time and make a scene. And eventually some kind people came and paid the $10 for both of us, and we got on the flight, and then I think we were just like, oh. So yeah, it's one of those sorts of occasions that actually in the moment, I don't know what it is, your sort of instincts take over, and you're actually calm and negotiating. And the thought that I sort of had in my mind is, can I be an action hero? Do I take him on? Do I could probably just kick him in the head here. It's like, no, don't do that. Just resist and go through it. But I think it's couple of hours afterwards that then you sort of just realise, and then all the sort of built up emotions sort of comes out. So it was an interesting flight back.
I don't know why this question came into my mind. Did you shake their hands at the end? Like, you finished negotiating, right? Is it something you got to the end and you shook hands?
We may actually have done so. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's curious. Huh?
But they were actually, weirdly to say, quite nice about it in the end, So yeah, I can't remember. We did that. They left us with the wedding rings. There was other stuff, personal stuff that we had that, was obviously of no value to them, but to us. So we took that and went on our way.
Did you already speak Spanish before that first trip to South America?
I did, yeah. So learnt Spanish at school in the UK. And when I was 14, I went on exchange to the north of Spain to the Basque Country.
Oh, brilliant. Where exactly?
Not too far from San Sebastian. A place called Biasen for a few weeks, but very interesting experiences there as well. So I was 14 when I went, and sort of this was mid-90s, so a very different environment in Spain then compared to the UK. So at 14, there were no issues about going into a bar and ordering a drink, and so most of us did. In the UK, we tended to go to bed about 9:30, 10 o'clock on a school night. In Spain, Carnival, whatever's on, so it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was a good few weeks, but of course, being in the Basque Country, particularly at that time, people didn't really want to speak Spanish. They wanted to speak Basque, so it wasn't necessarily the best place to go for a Spanish exchange to learn and improve Spanish. But yeah, really, really good experience nonetheless.
A lot of people might not know that little corner of Spain and France. It's where the coast of France kind of drops down from north to south and hits the top of Spain, and Spain runs sort of east to west. So it's a bit like a square angle almost.
Yeah.
And this little kind of circle, this little pocket of France and Spain is fiercely independent. I mean, so in the time when you were there, that would have been in, probably around the peak of that.
Peak ETA.
Peak ETA, independence movement. There was a terrorist movement. There was really quite an incredible, unsettled, almost dangerous in some ways time. If you're in politics, definitely dangerous.
Oh yeah, lots of assassinations, car bombs.
I'm sensing a theme here, mate.
Yeah, I know. Travel and danger, right, Rob? Yeah. We suspected, one or two of the host parents maybe to have ETA linkages, given that they sort of, some of the places they disappeared to. But yeah, interesting times.
It really is it's there we go, international man of mystery.
Yeah.
But it really is a fascinating part of the world because of this. It's notionally French or notionally Spanish, but it's 100% Basque.
Absolutely. It's a really beautiful part of the world. We went back there about this time last year, actually. That was the first time I'd been back there, and it was fantastic. My wife's got family also who live in that part of the world, and so we caught up with them, and yeah, it's great. Lovely part.
That must have been a cool linkage to make when you kind of realised, so you've met her on the other side of the world pretty much.
Yeah.
And then she's got family that's not far from where you'd spent some time.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how the world is like that, isn't it? You end up having these little world is smaller than it seems.
It's a very small world, and I think the more you travel, the more you realise it. There was another good example. So I worked as a diplomat in India for 3.5 years with Department of Home Affairs now. And actually, not long before I'd met my wife, my friend and I had actually gone out for the evening with a couple of other girls in Lima. And I'd remembered, one of the girls because of where she worked. She worked for the UN at the time, which was something that was of interest to me. She says, that could be good. And anyway, 15 years later, when we were in India, my wife likes dancing and those sorts of things. So she had met another Peruvian girl who was married to a British diplomat. And they'd gone dancing and they'd invited us over to their house for dinner. And about half an hour through that, I realised that his wife was one of the girls who we'd gone out with 15 years or so ago in Lima. Because of the name, he was just talking about, do we know each other? Just like, did you tell that story that night? I think I was doing an impression of the royal family or something. It's like, yeah, no, that was me. So it's just, very small world.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's the spit out, isn't it? How did you end up... So I get really curious about this. But you're international to the core.
Yeah.
But how? Why? I mean, were your parents travellers? Were your parents into that? Or was it just something that grabbed you when you were a kid and captured your imagination?
A bit of both. So my dad was with the Air Force. So we did move around a bit, and when I was 7 or 8, we moved to Hong Kong and spent 3 years in Hong Kong. So that was sort of a great experience, and that was... think would have been my first time ever overseas at that point. And then after that, it just grabbed me in different cultures, different languages. I was very interested in Russia as, 12-year-old and so on, and started trying to teach myself Russian at that point as well, not very successfully. So it's always been something that's really interested me. Different cultures, particularly European cultures, Latin American cultures. So yeah, sort of a bit of both. And I've had the chance now to live in India. I did a short time in Pakistan with the Australian government as well, and travelled, I think, filled in one of those app things not too long ago. I think I've done about 60 countries now. So
wow. Yeah. When you think about those 60 countries, which one jumps out to you as being the most different?
Oh wow.
Is there a spike there somewhere? I mean, you've seen a lot of different stuff, and it's one of those things is I'm letting you think while I fill in the space. Once you start to travel a lot, you get used to things being different, if that makes sense. But from time to time, we drop into a place and we're just like, boom, my holy smokes, this is so different. And it could be like a Western, I'm putting inverted commas, Western country, and it's just a city that has a character or a landscape or something like that just is so different. But for you, is there somewhere there that kind of pops?
It's probably a couple, Rob, actually. So China, even now, I find just incredibly different and foreign. And I've probably been there 15 or 20 times with work over the years. And it's just probably a combination of the language and things. English isn't widely spoken. And just some of the basic things like being able to buy yourself a McDonald's and realizing that you don't have WeChat or AliChat Pay, so you can't you can't do it. So just different ways to pay and what you can and can't use on the internet, so the apps and so on you're used to using. So China I still find like that. In terms of just sort of awe and wonder, I think probably Bolivia the first time when I flew into La Paz and the airport, which is what, 6,000 meters or something above sea level, and we sort of go down into the city, which is like in a canyon, and just walking around. That just felt, yes, a combination of being really, really different, but something that was also quite interesting and intoxicating with all the different things going on.
Yeah, wow. And so then India as well. So I've never been to India, declaration of interest. I've never been there. And funnily enough, I don't think I was ever curious about India. Now I'm very curious to get to India. Where were you and what struck you most about, the country's huge and so diverse. So, that's deliberately leaving that as a massive open question. So feel free to take that where you want.
In India, I was in New Delhi. So in New Delhi for 3.5 years. And obviously with that, travelled around and went to most of the major cities and so on. India's an interesting one. We were really interested to go there. So when you apply for postings, or I'm sure same now, but at the time with Home Affairs, range available, and you tick, 1, 2, 3, etc. And India was my top one. It was from a work perspective, it was going to be interesting to go to, given the scale of the relationship between Australia and India. But again, just somewhere different we hadn't been to. And we prepared in the 6 months beforehand, as you do, by watching Bollywood films to get a true sense of the country, which was probably an element of that, but not fully so. And maybe a tourist guide or, Smart Traveller or something might have been more helpful. But yeah, it was good. I remember when we first got there, again, similar sort of thing. It's just amazing, all the colours, all the things going on in the background, the noises, the smells. It really was everything that everybody says. And I think for the first 6 months it was like that. It was just great. Every weekend we'd go off and visit somewhere else that maybe we'd heard about and experience the country. So yeah, I really, really enjoy. We've got some really good friends still in India. So I really enjoy the chance to get back. Normally every year with work I get the chance to go back there. So it's great to go and catch up with people.
Did you transition straight from government to uni, or did you have into a university, or did you have was there a stop somewhere in the middle career-wise before jumping into university?
straight from government to university. And so I first got into international education around, I think, 2010, maybe towards the end of 2010, when I was in Delhi. So I first came to Delhi and I was looking after the tourism program, and then moved to international education just as everything was going the wrong direction in Australia. I mean, that was a time of all the reports of attacks and diplomatic tensions and so on. So I did that. Then I came back and then managed to get a job heading up international education policy for the department, and did that for 4 years. Spent a bit of time working for Minister Cash and Minister Dutton as well, and looking at that portfolio, but a few others as well. And then when I came back, when I finished that, I'd been in the role for about 4.5 years, and it was time to do something different career-wise. So the option was either to look for a movement within the department in a different area, or another department, or I really liked international education, and Rong Yu Lee at the time had, reached out. University of Canberra, I think, had some unique problems where some immigration expertise could be valuable, and through Rong Yu, I was able to get, and with a bit of help, I should say, from Phil Honeywood, was able to get a job at the University of Canberra, and then things sort of progressed from there.
I love that. I wasn't aware of that connection. Yeah, but now, of course, going back and looking, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, Rong Yu was there. So he's brought a good person into the sector. Isn't that great? I love that.
It is, yeah, and I'm forever grateful to Phil and Rong Yu for that, because, there's obviously skills from government that you bring into the sector, but it is different. Typically into those deputy directors, and I went as a deputy director initially, director roles, you have people who've got experience actually in universities, in the sector, and I didn't have that, so I had to learn some of those things very quickly. I didn't know what an articulation was on my first day.
Language, right?
And some of these things like, what's that? So, oh yeah, no, that makes sense, like I get it, but there were a whole range of things like that initially that I had to learn very, very quickly.
Because this is obviously an international ed podcast.
Yeah.
For those people who are listening who haven't worked in government, what should they know about working with government? So how you have to interface with government. I'm fortunate in the sense that I've had a little bit of an opportunity to do that over the last 15 years or so. But it is quite an important thing to learn how to do, is to understand how the sort of working the workings of government, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it is really important to understand, what public servants can do and
What they
can't
can't,
do. Ultimately, as a public servant, your job is to serve a minister of the day. And, I think sometimes in the sector, people do have unreasonable expectations of what a public servant can say, particularly in terms of policy matters, and commit to. And many times they're actually out of their control. It's a ministerial decision. There's a process that needs to then be pursued and completed before some of that information can then be made public. So I think if you understand the process as to how legislation and regulations are developed, I think like with anything though, and it's the same within an organisation like a university, you have to have political awareness in terms of what are the objectives of the person who you want to influence. So what's the objectives of the department? What's the objectives of the minister? How can you then communicate and influence in a way that takes that into account and pitch the point or objective that you want to achieve in that kind of language, so that it makes it look like, actually what you're trying to do does align with that or is sympathetic. It's a skill. I certainly don't get it right all of the time, but I think if you can put yourselves in the shoes and understand the objectives, understand the workings of government, I think you've got a much better chance of success.
So from your perspective, because you're quite uniquely positioned, there are a few people in the sector that have had government experience, some, but from your perspective, you clearly see both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, and I don't want maybe dwell on this too much because I don't want to timestamp this conversation too much, but this is a broad question. Australian international ed has been through many crises over the last 20 to 30 years. Some of those economic crises, some of them are political crises, and when these crises occur, the sector has to interface with government. So at time of recording, we're in one potential such crisis. So from your point of view, what does the sector need to do differently or better to communicate what we need, maybe the value of what we do, to raise that understanding? And I'm not saying that sector is right, government is wrong. That's absolutely not the case. But to get a better result, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it goes from both sides, Rob. And I think if I look at the way we sort of move through these boom and bust cycles, I think there's fault and opportunity on both sides to improve those outcomes. You certainly look at the most recent one, and then there are some policy changes, the unlimited work hours, for example, the extensions to post-study work, which I think all of us in the sector could say, as a result of this, these are the things that are going to happen. And people perhaps in government didn't want to listen to us at that time. But at the same time, there were also other bad actors within the sector who take advantage of those positions, obviously not for the broader good of Australia. So I think from my perspective, there needs to be broader engagement, consultation, genuine co-design of some of these sorts of policy elements and responses between government and sector. I'm seeing signs of that starting to emerge with the current government, particularly since the last election, which is really, really positive. But I think that's the key to success, some mutual trust. If we have to sign NDAs and the like, I don't think that's an issue, but bring in some expertise, because there is a gap, and it's been really helpful for me to see the other side and actually really understand the mechanics of universities and how things do work, and that from a policy perspective, if you do this is how it's going to actually play out and what might work and what won't work. And obviously I know a lot more now from that perspective than I did when I was just in government. So I think there is that knowledge gap which can be bridged by working collectively together, because I think ultimately government and the sector, particularly universities, we want the same thing. We want a sustainable, predictable, quality international education sector which is underpinned by high levels of integrity. So let's work together to achieve that.
As you're talking there, Mike, what kind of comes into my mind, often you've got the the big four consulting companies. Those staff members will often go and spend a period of time embedded in a government department, and occasionally vice versa as well. And in some industries that occurs. I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing if you could have people from the public service actually spending a secondment period inside the sector? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, of course, and vice versa too, because there's obviously some amazing stuff that we could take away as an industry by understanding government better, and once again, people to people, isn't it?
Exactly.
Having those relationships that you can have good communication, understand each other, I think then sort of remove some of the misunderstanding.
It'd be so effective, Rob. I think getting that mutual experience, it just and broadening your knowledge. And, if you're then making an informed decision where you understand what the implications will be, so be it. But it's just bridging that gap. From a government perspective, I was, talking to someone the other night about this. One of the things that I did with immigration, I designed the simplified student visa system. And part of the cabinet commitment we secured about that was that certain policy elements would be settled in co-design with the sector. And I did that for two reasons. One was to make sure that actually we did get good policy and that it did work and we took into account all of those things. And two, I actually wanted to bring the sector on the journey so that if this went wrong, we're all in this together. I think we need to do more. As I said, I'm seeing some signs that it's happening, but I think we need to double down on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's interesting. So I was quite heavily involved in the design of the new Colombo plan, and that was designed from opposition. But, NCP now is still going, 12, 13 years later. It's crossed the government divide. So it's gone from being coalition policy. Now Labor has continued the policy. And I think one of the things that has always worked really well for NCP is the fact that from day one, there was that consultation. Yeah. I mean, maybe some of my learning abroad colleagues might be unhappy with some of the changes. I'm not going to go there. Yeah. But actually, I think some of the changes are good. But, that co-design process, I feel has been part of its longevity.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you do that and, obviously if you can get cross-party support and all of those things, which the new Colombo plan seems to largely have.
Now it does, yeah.
And really international education was almost a unity ticket for a while. It's only really been in the last 5 or so years where ranks have broken a little bit. So I think we need to find that point of consensus, and if you can get 90% or so like that and just sort of fiddle around with some of the edges, I think it's better for everyone, including Australia.
You're now living up in Brisbane, so you've lived at quite a number of places around Australia.
I have, yes. We moved to Sydney initially. I went to uni in Canberra, and now Brisbane for the last 18 months.
What do you like about Brisbane?
Good. I did like Canberra in the weather, but the winters are cold, so it is nice in the winter to still be able to wear shorts and t-shirts. And I've quickly adapted to Brisbane. I haven't quite started wandering around to supermarkets without shoes yet, but that's probably a few months away. But no, look, it's great. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she loves the weather, the ability to go out and spend time in swimming pools and those sorts of things. And we're still just discovering things. We're still at that stage where there's different parts of the city that we haven't been to. I went to Kangaroo Point for the first time last week. There was somewhere else.
Magic, isn't it?
In Tenerife, I think we went to at the weekend. There was a park there, and just sort of wandering around our New Farm Park. And so there's all these parts of the city that we're still discovering. So we're still in that phase.
You're going to have to be careful, Mike. You're going to end up with children that, have the same wanderlust as you do.
I think we do. So,
there's this expression sorry, cut it off there. There's this expression in French, which is cats don't breed dogs.
Yeah, no, I think my daughter is very worryingly like me at an early age, and she at the moment wants to be a flamenco dancer. That's her ambition. So she's been doing flamenco shows on the Gold Coast and those sorts of things. So,
have you been to Andalusia, like down Seville?
Yes. I've been there the last couple of years, and so she took flamenco classes there, and was wandering around the streets of Sevilla with flamenco dress and fully. And was then very disappointed when we went to the UK, and she was like, said in English, Dad, why do people here not say, hola guapita, hi beautiful to me? Like they said that to me all the time in Spain. Am I not beautiful anymore? No, it's just different country. So that was, her days. So I think she quite learned from a young age that quite liked the positive praise.
So you've got family still in the UK?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So my parents are here, but rest of my family, or most of the rest of my family, is still in the UK. So we try to get back there every couple of years.
Do you think your parents would be surprised where you've ended up?
I don't know, Rob. When I was 7 or 8, I wanted to be a bus driver, so quite possibly.
Mate, we've got a point of connection there. When I was in high school, I did one of those career things, right? This is old technology. It's not the stuff we're working on now. Quiz, and it came out and told me I should be a train driver. So, mate, we're kind of like kindred spirits in some way.
we possibly do. I remember when I was 7 writing to the Kowloon Motor Bus Company asking if I could test drive one of their buses, and being very disappointed when they came back and said no.
Mike, it's been a great pleasure having a chat with you on Global Horizons. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful morning in Canberra, sitting in our car park. people I've been walking to work past us kind of looking over and being like, what are those two guys doing podcasts? But it's been a great pleasure having you on Global Horizons.
Thanks, Rob. Pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Global Horizons podcast, consider subscribing to our newsletter. Search for Global Horizons podcast and then just pop in your email address, and that way you will never miss out on all of the critical international education news that you need to stay up to date with. This episode has been produced on Garigal land in Sydney. Our video and audio editor is Len Zamora, and I'm your host, Rob Malicki. Have an awesome day. See you in the next episode.